So good afternoon and welcome to the legislative wrap-up for our June luncheon. My name is Zenobia Harris and I'm the CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is copyrighted and presented by the Kent Chamber of Commerce and cannot be reproduced or transmitted in any form without the express or written consent of the chamber. This meeting is also being recorded and hosted live on our Facebook page by South King Media, our media sponsor, also known as I Love Kent. So for all things media and community updates, you can follow them on Facebook. Today, we highly encourage you to ask questions via the chat or our Facebook feed, and our moderator will be sure to get those questions asked at the end when we do our question and answers series. Again, thank you for being here today. Our goal is to our goal is for you to walk away with an understanding of what legislation was impactful for our business community. As you can see on the screen here, I do want to recognize our investors, and our investors go above and beyond typical membership to ensure that we can continue to put on programming such as this. And again, want to recognize South King Media, I Love Kent, but the next slide will have all of the different investors for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. And then we want to give a special thank you to our luncheon sponsor. They're our annual luncheon sponsor, and it's Abyssinia Beauty Clinic. And they're here in town Kent. They just had a wonderful ribbon cutting not more than 2 months ago. So go in and check out the different services that they have. With that being said, thank you so much to our sponsors. Thank you so much for our attendees being here. And we really appreciate our legislators making time to give this update to our community. Now it's with pleasure that I introduce our president for 2021 for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. Her name is Julia Atwood. She is with Shannon and Associates, and she has served on the board of directors for several years, and she's brought strategy to the chamber since beginning her presidency in 2021. Please welcome Julia Atwood.
Good afternoon, and it's my pleasure to introduce our forum today. One of the benefits of being a chamber member is the ability to advocate for legislation that has a positive impact for our business community. We know that we're stronger together and we value the ability to have one collective voice. Today, we are honored to be joined by our legislative leadership so they can share information about their session. So joining us today are Senator Mona Goss from the 47th District, Senator Keiser from the 33rd District, Representative Mia Gregerson from the 33rd District, Representative Tina Orwall from the 47th District, CAO Derek Matheson from the City of Kent, and King County Councilmember Dave Upthegrove. Please help me welcome today our conversation moderator, Carmen Goers. Carmen is with Heritage Bank and also serves as the co-chair of the Kent Chamber Government Affairs Committee. Carmen?
Thank you for that time. I am here to moderate our elected officials along with CAO Derek Matheson. If you have questions, as a reminder, please put them in the chat box or the question and answer tab, and we will get to you as soon as we can. So I'm going to start with introducing Senator Karen Keiser. And so Senator Keiser has represented Washington's 33rd Legislative District. As President Pro Tem, she presides over the Washington State Senate when the governor is unavailable. As chair of the Senate Labor, Commerce, and Tribal Affairs Committee, she champions policies that help working families and improve women's economic security. Longtime chair of the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee, Senator Keiser was a pivotal leader in reforming Washington's healthcare system, implementing the Affordable Care Act, and passing Washington's nation-leading paid family and medical leave program. She also serves as a lead Senate Democrat negotiator on the capital budget. Senator Keiser, thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you, Carmen. And I'm going to try and time myself and keep it to under 8 minutes. I want to thank Zenobia for your wonderful leadership as well. And I want to say hello, and I hope we get to know each other better, Julie, to the new president of the Kent Chamber. Thank you again for hosting this remote meeting. I think the remote meetings are wonderful because so many more people can join them, but I sure miss having in-person meetings. So I hope we can restore those here in the next few months. This has been a historic session that we just wrapped up in 2021, and not the least because of this awful pandemic that we've had to deal with for the last year. We actually never did have a break last year because we were always on the verge of going into special session. So we were working on proposals throughout the interim last year. One of my biggest concerns as chair of the Labor, Commerce, and Tribal Affairs Committee was seeing the impact on businesses with unemployment insurance premiums. You know, when the pandemic hit, our unemployment insurance claims increased in 1 week by over 900%. Every time you have a premium claim or claim on unemployment insurance, you also have a repercussion on the premium of that insurance that is paid by business. So we were watching this huge explosion of unemployment. We went from about 3% unemployment to 16% unemployment in our state last spring. We're down now to less than 6%, but in the meantime, many businesses were faced with huge increases in their unemployment premiums that were scheduled to take effect last January. And I went right to work to try and mitigate those premium increases. Like all insurance, it's experience rated. So if you have layoffs and reductions in workforce, you have higher premiums. It's like a car accident. You have a car accident, your insurance premium for your car goes up. Having a layoff is like a car accident, and we had too many of those, especially in the targeted sectors that affect our district so much, which includes hospitality and tourism and retail. It didn't hurt the Costco's of the world or the Kroger's of the world or the Amazon fulfillment center. That's one place in Kent that at least did not have a shutdown or a layoff. At any rate, my goal, and we got it done in the first 3 weeks of session, was to mitigate those premiums that were due to go into effect, those huge increases in premiums, sometimes as much as 500, 600% increases in premiums that would be paid by employers to the Employment Security Department. So we took a bill, 5061, as an emergency measure and passed it and got it signed into law within the first 3 weeks of this last session. 5061 mitigated over $1 billion in premium increases that would have gone into effect had we not taken that action. Then we followed up on unemployment insurance towards the end of the session with 5478, which will affect the 2022 premiums, again, in a very targeted way, aimed at helping all of those in the hospitality, the tourism, the public venue kind of performing spaces, as well as in retail. Those sectors of our economy that were so horribly hit will again get mitigation up to about $500 million in their premiums for 2022. I'll revisit the premiums in the fall when the calculations are being put back together. At the moment, I'm getting a little encouraged because our unemployment rate is going down, and that means that the premiums should mitigate on their own. All along while we're doing this, of course, we had to make sure that our trust fund was healthy and we didn't run out of money. That's the other side of premiums, is that's what pays for the benefits. So that was probably the most intense, longest, and heavy lifting legislation I've ever worked on, those two bills on unemployment insurance. But we had a couple of other really big wins this last session. I just want to speak to very quickly. I'm trying to see how fast, oh shoot, my stopwatch isn't working. You're gonna have to call me on time, Carmen. The child care issue became critical for the time when we wanted people to return to work. When we had so many layoffs and schools were closed, most working families had to make some accommodations with childcare. I know many women who actually quit their jobs in order to take care of their kids who were online for public school or who did not have childcare available. And it has really hurt the entire childcare industry. What we did this year was pass a really landmark legislation called Fair Start for Kids that helps the whole childcare industry with higher rates for childcare, with higher subsidies for working families, and with more capacity for childcare. If we can rebuild the capacity for childcare, I know that people who are still hesitant to depend on childcare during a pandemic are more likely to return to work. Right now, 1/3 of the decline of the female workforce, which has been huge, has come because, in part, because of the lack of childcare and paid leave. So the Fair Start for Kids Act will address that huge problem for both employees and employers. Because as you know, if your employees do not have available, affordable, and dependable childcare, they're not going to be available and dependable as employees. The last bill I want to mention that is sort of specific, I think, to South King County and perhaps Kent itself is a health equity zone bill. This bill is aimed at addressing health disparities between different communities of color. We all know the statistics about all the different issues from COVID to maternal health to diabetes. The facts are clear that we have horrible health disparities between different communities of color that need to be addressed. The Health Equity Zone Bill will focus in on a ground level micro view of dealing with building trust, building social capacity and networks so that we are able to deliver improvements in our health outcomes and not just describe the disparities anymore. I am so tired of hearing the statistics about the disparities and so eager to address reducing those disparities. So my health equity zone bill was just signed into law. I'm meeting with the Department of Health this afternoon to talk about implementation. And the first step in implementation will be to define areas and neighborhoods where we have especially difficult disparities that need to be addressed, and then undertake the implementation of building that network. So I hope you'll work with me to work on that. It's a big lift as well, but I'm excited to take action on this really critical issue. We did so much this session. It really truly was a historic session, but we have many other members here to talk about all the different issues for Kent as well as all of South King County. I want to thank you again for this privilege to speak with you and to serve you, and I'll be happy to answer questions when it's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Keiser. We appreciate your service and look forward to hearing more about your health equity zone. I didn't hear much about that in last session, but there's a lot of information going around. So next we have Senator Doss. Senator Doss represents the 47th Legislative District. She was elected in 2018 and now serves as caucus vice chair, the vice chair of the Senate Housing Affordability and Stability Committee, and as a member of both the Senate Transportation Committee and the Senate Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee. During her first 2 years as an elected official, Senator Doss has worked on behalf of the environment, affordable housing, and equity and inclusion. As her third year in 2021, she is continuing her work to make our communities and our planet healthier. Welcome, Senator Doss.
Thank you so much, Carmen and Zenobia and the rest of the Kent Chamber of Commerce. It's just an honor and a pleasure to be here, and an honor and pleasure to serve Kent. I want to first start out by saying, this session, as Senator Keiser mentioned a few times, was historic in so many ways. First virtual session in the history of the Washington State Legislature. And at the beginning, we were confident that we could pass a few bills, but we actually passed, from what I understand, 334 bills. So that is about what we normally pass. I'm excited to share that the bills were very different this year. Both the Senate and the House were encouraged to really focus on 4 areas: COVID recovery and relief, which Senator Keiser talked a lot about. Her bills about unemployment were, really did affect so many families in our state. So I want to thank Senator Keiser for her leadership and her extreme passion and dedication to making sure our neighbors received the unemployment benefits that they needed. The second was, due to the uprising after the murder of George Floyd, there was so much civil conversation and discourse. And really, we really truly focused on diversity, equity, and anti-racism this year in the legislature, which I think was long overdue and wonderful. We had so many new BIPOC community members join us in the legislature. And so I'm very proud of what the members of color and the Black Members Caucus were able to work together to accomplish, along with our white allies in the Senate and House. So thank you for everyone on their leadership there and support. The third was the environment. So we did a lot of work with the environment. And then the fourth area that we focused on was police accountability and police reform. And I just want to say hats off. I know Rep. Orwall is on this call, Rep. Mia Gregerson, Senator Keiser. I don't think Rep. Entenmann or Representative Sullivan are here today, but I want to say that your Kent team, works together as a team. We also add Senator Hasagawa, Representative Berquist, and new Representative David Hackney also represent a small part of Kent. And so the 9 of us really worked together to make sure Kent was front and center in everything that we do. As you may or may not have heard about, we've been trying to pass for years, SST mitigation, streamlined sales tax. I ran a bill, Deborah's run bills, I know Pat's run bills, and this year we finally got it passed. Last year we got it passed, it just was vetoed due to COVID, and this year we got it passed again. And Senator Keiser is instrumental, and Rep. Gregerson, both being on the budget committees and being able to, really highlight to their colleagues how important that is for our district and how important it is for Kent. So I'm very proud that that bill is finally law, which is great. We did so much great things for Kent this year and for the rest of our state. I'm very proud to be part of this Kent delegation, and I hope you all know that you can reach out to all of us. Representative Orwall is, extremely such a great legislator, and I know she'll talk about her 988 bill and her foreclosure prevention bills, which I was very honored to work on a little bit. I'm one legislator that's very public about having gone through a foreclosure in the mortgage crisis in 2011. And so I'm very grateful for her work. I want to make sure that it was a hellish experience. It took me almost 10 years to get my credit score back up to 750, where it was before my foreclosure. And I know many of my neighbors experience that hardship. And so the work that Representative Orwall has done is extraordinary. And I thank her for taking that issue on because it's very personal to me. We had there's so many wins. I'm doing a little work for the White House. And so I had to come up with a list of all the policy areas. And, honest to goodness, there was advancements in technology and broadband, early education, community colleges, climate, energy, EVs. I bought an electric vehicle last year and experienced so many hardships trying to get the car charged that I brought forward an EV infrastructure bill that really ties in nicely with Biden's American Jobs Plan for EV infrastructure. If we're going to move off fossil fuels and move off fuel powered cars, we've got to have that infrastructure. And I know I'm not a super early adopter of EVs, but by the time I got one last year, I noticed a lot of holes in that infrastructure. So I brought a bill forward for that. Lots of advancements in diversity and equity and anti-racism. I also brought forward a bill to make sure that teachers and educators and administrators and school board members had diversity, equity, and anti-racism training so they could help students from different backgrounds be successful in school. And that's really a personal story for me from when I was a child, not getting, not having my teachers understand that English was my second language. And so I've carried that with me. And so it was really great to bring that bill forward. Housing, we did some great work in the Housing Trust Fund, the most money we've ever put in the Housing Trust Fund. I believe it was, I want to say 175, it might've been 200 million. I want to just shout out to Senator Patty Caterer, and Rep. Macri, who brought forward bills to end just cause, or start just cause, meaning that if you get evicted, you're going to have to tell the person who's being evicted why they were evicted. And so we just brought forward so many great bills and worked together as a great team. And I'm getting the 90-second hook here. So just wanted to share that I'm just honored and proud to work with so many incredible colleagues from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the bicameral. And it's just been a great honor to serve the city of Kent. If you need to reach out to me, please, my number is here, my email is here. We're very accessible. We'd love to hear from you on bill ideas you have or issues that you're having. And I just want to say thank you again for your support. And I am an honor to serve. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Senator Dawes. I know it was a hectic year, and Zoom fatigue was an understatement as you listen to testimony. Next, we have Representative Tina Orwall. She represents the 33rd District since 2009. She has been impactful in rape kit reform, suicide prevention, anti-trafficking, the Foreclosure Fairness Act, compensation for those wrongly convicted, and adoptee rights are among her legislative accomplishments. She has worked at all levels of government to help embrace best practices to better serve the community. Her 20 years of experience working in the public mental health system, as well as her expertise in strategic planning and workforce development and affordable housing, have established her as a value legislator and community leader. In addition, she is an active member of the Kent Chamber of Commerce. Thank you and welcome, Representative Orwall.
Thank you, Carmen, for that kind introduction. It's an incredible honor to serve our district. I'm going to apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, and so my voice is, I'm losing it a little bit. I want to start just saying, I just am so proud of the work my colleagues have done. And Senator Dawes, you're right. We work as an incredible team. You had a great session. You are a environment rock star and a housing rock star. Thank you. But there was a really strong focus of how do we support families and businesses that were impacted by COVID. And, it was so many challenges facing our community, and, how could we mobilize resources? And I do want to shout out that the first bill I think that went through the legislature was Representative Wallen's bill, which was really to make sure businesses weren't taxed on the federal dollars. And again, our priority was to get as much dollars to the community as we could. And I also want to recognize Senator Keiser, the unemployment insurance is such an important piece. None of this was any fault of anyone, and we need to protect folks from those rates and make sure that that account stays healthy. So we got a lot done this session. I'm going to talk about a few things. It was a little surreal having so much of it remote. Some of the bonuses I think of it is on the committees. We had a huge amount of participation. And I think a lot of people were able to engage and participate that maybe haven't participated in committee meetings in the past. We also, on the House side, started doing closed caption, which I was really proud of. So I think we learned a lot, and I think our staff in Olympia worked hard to make that happen. One of the things that was mentioned that I work on is foreclosure prevention. Incredibly concerned. I mean, how do we keep people in their homes? And one of the things that we noticed on the hotline, we have a hotline where people can call to get housing counseling and mediation. And we started getting a huge number of calls from small business owners. And so it was really important that we make sure that these services, which are statewide, are really robust and prepared to help any struggling homeowner. The other thing we did, and I worked with Representative Ryu, was to expand it to help small landlords that were struggling so that they could access housing counseling and mediation as well. Some of the other things that I worked on, I know it was brought up the 988. You know, during this pandemic, you know, you usually ask somebody, how are you? And they say, fine. I think we're not saying fine anymore. I think we're kind of all realizing that we're under incredible stress, that things do impact our mental health, but not only our own, but our family. And so, you know, a big part of what I worked on is, you know, how do we support people in crisis? And one of the things that happened at the federal level is they passed a 988 bill. So starting July of 2022, there'll be a 3-digit number that you can call if you're experiencing a behavioral health crisis or a suicidal, or a family member can call that number. And that will be a way that we can really create a system, a robust system that can respond to people in crisis. They can provide the care in the community to help them during what can be a very traumatic part of their life. And so it's probably the biggest lift I've done. I've done a lot of suicide prevention bills, but I think this one can save the most lives. I have to recognize Senator Dingra. She was my partner on this bill, along with Representative Lauren Davis. But again, I think, you know, I think the more we can do, and I just have to say, I'm really worried about our youth. They were already struggling before the pandemic. We know that they're struggling now. And so a lot of the services we want to tailor are going to be to youth. And so I'm really proud of that work. You know, some of the other things we did were in the budgets, and I have to do a hat off to my colleagues on the budgets because I think they did a really good job. One of the smaller items that I'm proud of was around the capital budget. The Seattle World Relief in Kent got a budget, and I think it was for $515,000 to open this this kitchen, this community kitchen that will be open for immigrant families. It'll be like a place where meals can be served, people can learn new skills. It can be a place where we welcome our beautifully diverse community. And so I want to thank them for that. And I was glad that was fully funded in our budget. The other thing that was in the budget is, you know, we did just incredible stuff on police reform. And I want to thank Representative Entenmann and the members of Color Caucus that led that work. One of the things we did in Kent is we had, and I worked with Representative Entenmann, is we had a partnership between the Kent Police Department and communities of color. And we had leaders that met, and I want to recognize Councilmember Brenda Fincher, to see how could we work together to help support new officers. And so the dollars will be helping agencies to provide community placement and mentorship for new officers. That is also a way we can see, is it a good fit, this new officer in Kent? What are new skills that they need to connect to the community? And the mentors that they'll receive, they'll have over a longer period of time. So I'm really proud of that. I think that's a nice local solution that we can do to start to heal our communities. And we're hoping, if that's successful, that that's something that could be throughout the state. So those are a few of the things. Again, I do have to do a shout on the streamlined sales tax mitigation and thank my colleagues that led that effort. We know that was incredibly important to our community. And again, I want to say I'm available for questions or concerns. We want to hear from you, and thank you for this time.
Thank you, Representative Orwall. We appreciate your service as well and hope you feel better real soon. We have a great summer ahead of us, so being in the weather is not a part of that. Next, we have Representative Mia Gregerson. She was appointed in 2013 to represent the 33rd Legislative District. Many of her legislative accomplishments include serving as vice chair of both the House Appropriation Committee and House members of Color Caucus, expanding voting rights, ensuring our residents are housed, helping to establish Washington's first Office of Equity, and championing statewide digital equity. She prides herself in representing one of the most racially diverse districts in the state. Welcome, Representative Mia Gregerson. Thank you for your time and statements today.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much again for letting me be part of this amazing panel. One of the great parts about being last in the lineup is I can really try hard to make sure that my comments are supportive of the things that have already been talked about today, but not repetitive. And as you talked about, I have a little bit different role. I'm no longer the chair of state government and tribal relations, while I'm still a member of that and overseeing a lot of things related to elections and democracy and state government. I'm now on the budget team, budget writing team for appropriations. And so I spent so much of my time, 14 hours a day, probably working on this large budget. It's the largest in history, 1,100 pages. It's $59 billion. And as you know, we had federal dollars coming in the middle of session. So there was another bill, 1368, and that was a $2.2 billion early action budget. And then the second one is really centered around recovery. So I'm going to try to use my remarks to really focus on that. So if you think about helping our business community, we already talked a little bit about helping with Senator Keiser's bill, the $500 million support, and then of course in the early action. But we also had about $500 million in small business connectivity grants, resiliency grants, and ensuring to help get those small businesses back to work, additional support around PPE and safe distancing. We had $400 million in childcare providers. So those went directly into our childcare providers to ensure that they could stay open or open where they are. We had about $440 million for our Working Immigrant Relief Fund. And again, those are through the two different budgets. So many working folks in our community were not getting access to the stimulus funds and unemployment. And again, when they're receiving cash dollars, they're putting that right back into our community. So we knew that part of the recovery efforts is to get cash into people's hands. Part of that is paying the caseloads down for HEN and other affordable disaster cash relief grants, working families. So hundreds of millions of dollars in that space. Looking at affordable housing and helping keep people in their homes, over $1 billion in rental assistance. And again, that rental assistance goes directly to the landlord. So that's all been negotiated. And again, very pro-business again, because it's helping those that are renting, relieve them of their inability to pay rent, but also helps the landlord. And there's a sense of security and understanding how much money they can expect. And with that, we knew that we also needed to invest in legal assistance and dispute resolution. So about $500,000 to over $4 million, depending on what part of the budget, to help support the community so they can get legal support. We know that there are about 2 million Washingtonians who are food insecure through the pandemic. And so we invested over $170 million towards whether it's the food system, food production with our farmers, or whether it's farmer markets, and then hunger access, hunger relief efforts. I could go on, but over $2 billion in helping through Department of Health, of course, as you know, both in COVID testing, PPE, but also the vaccination efforts, really utilizing the same type of collaborative that we saw through the census outreach last year. And remember, Washington State was the #1 state when it came to folks signing up and being part of the census. So we know that this model works. We know that trusted messengers work. And throughout the budget, we really made sure that language in there supported our CBOs, did a better job in trusting those are where they are all around the state. We did about $3.5 billion towards K through 12. Those are just federal pass-through dollars to help, again, make sure that our schools have the funds to ensure that they can keep people employed, and then also prepare for opening up the schools, whether it was hybrid at the time, and now, of course, as we prepare for full openings here soon. So with that, I could probably go on longer, but I'm very proud and honored to be part of this team working to ensure that Kent definitely has a voice here. Kent businesses are thriving. People are staying in their homes. As you're building more homes, we'll continue to work to advocate for a strong transportation package, hopefully here in the near future. And again, a very large capital budget. I think that was also the largest in history. I think $6.3 billion worth of capital investments. And again, that keeps people employed. And I haven't even touched on the digital divide work, but I hate to continue to have people sit and listen to me talk. So thank you so much for the opportunity to give you an update. And I was in the district office in Kent just this week, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Representative Gregerson, you mentioned the acronym of CBO in your last comment. Can you tell us what that means?
I'm so sorry, Carmen. Community-based organizations, folks that are working outside of government, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, who are real strong partners, whether it's with the school community, whether it's our elders, our communities of color. So we recognize that those community-based organizations, that they're such a strong connection to our community. And as a government, the best way we can do our part is to provide resources for them to do that work.
Okay. I believe that fell when you're talking about trusted messengers. So I just wanted to make sure we were, everyone understood what you were referring to.
My apology. Thank you so much.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Thank you for your service again. Next, we have from our City of Kent, Derek Matheson is our Chief Administrative Officer, CAO for short, here, and he is appointed by the mayor to oversee the day-to-day operations of the city. He also serves as the mayor's direct report in overseeing 10 different directors and acts as the mayor's liaison to the Kent City Council. And just a quick note, early in life, Derek found a passion and interest in public service and local government. He is passionate about local government management because of the range of projects and services he has overseen during his tenure. Everything from animal control to zoning and the many things in between. He feels local government can make a visible difference in a concentrated geographic area, and you can actually see the results of your work and policies. Good afternoon, Derek, and welcome to the chamber.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the nice introduction, Carmen. And good afternoon to everybody. It's really nice to be back in front of you to talk about the City of Kent's 2021 legislative agenda, and especially about everything our legislators did to accomplish it during, as you heard, a momentous and very unusual virtual session. The city's top priority, as you've heard our legislators mention today, was to continue to secure funding for the streamlined sales tax mitigation program. And I know that's a mouthful, but basically, the state changed the way it distributes sales tax revenue to cities over a decade ago. And that change made a lot of sense for the state as a whole, but it hurt cities with large warehousing economies like Kent. And so we've historically received up to $5 million a year to compensate us for lost revenue, along with our neighbors Auburn, Tukwila, and 4 other cities. Senator Doss mentioned that the legislature appropriated funding last year, and then the governor vetoed it as a cost savings measure at the start of the pandemic. But thankfully, our legislators were able not only to restore the vetoed funding this session, but they also championed and passed legislation that continues those assistance payments until 2026. And that means the city is going to be able to continue to invest in important capital projects, everything from streets and sidewalks to parks and technology. And I want to note it was really a team effort where all of our legislative delegation worked together to make this happen for Kent and our neighbors. Representative Sullivan played a key role as one of the lead budget writers. Representative Entenman and Senator Doss prime sponsored the legislation. Senator Keiser helped us navigate the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and then Representatives Orwall and Gregerson were right there to support us. So that was great, and we're very pleased. The legislature also adopted a robust capital budget that funds several projects in the city of Kent. There's $3 million to create a community park in the Panther Lake neighborhood. And this is an area of the city ever since it was annexed about 10 years ago that's the most underserved for park services. And so when it's complete, that Panther Lake Community Park is going to have a playground, restrooms, open play field, a picnic shelter, and trail access and parking for the Seuss Creek Trail. The state also awarded $3 million in grants for our Downey Farmstead project. This is the big construction project that you can see on Highway 516 as you're going west from the Valley Freeway. It's a 22-acre site with fish habitat and increased water storage in the Green River to mitigate flooding. The legislature also funded several grant programs that the city benefits from through the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Grant Program and the Youth Athletic Facilities Grant Program. We received over $500,000 to renovate Kent Memorial Park. And then through the Department of Transportation Bike and Pedestrian Program, we're going to get 2 grants for pedestrian improvements. One of those is on 108th at the new Panther Lake Library, where the library is on one side of a busy street, and most of the public and young people who use it are on the other side. And then another improvement, a missing link on Russell Road over by Hogan Park. You heard our legislators talk about leadership on social and criminal justice reform, where they passed over 10 police reform bills. And want to say we're really appreciative to legislators for allocating funding to cities that are going to help us implement the changes that are called for in those bills. And the city is continuing to work on criminal justice reform too. We've created an equity manager position in city administration, and we have an equity commander in the police department. We adopted use of force and duty to report misconduct policies before a lot of other police departments in the state. We've set aside funding to collect data on police use of force and make it available on a publicly facing online dashboard. And then Representative Orwall mentioned the community immersion program for new police officers. So we're excited about all of those things. The legislature also reformed and expanded the multifamily property tax incentive program to increase housing supply. And so we want to thank Senator Doss for sponsoring that and working with our planning staff to help put that together. The legislature also responded to the middle of our economic recovery and took actions to support Kent's small businesses. One of the things the legislature did was expand our Main Street tax credit program. And this allows our Kent Downtown Partnership to work with local businesses where they can actually, in a way, redirect some of their business and occupations tax payments from the state to the KDP and support our small business community. And then after a lot of years, the legislature authorized what's called tax increment financing, which is an economic development tool that's available in 40 other states and now is at our disposal here in Washington. So we're really excited about that. Representative Gregerson noted that the legislature hasn't adopted a transportation revenue package yet, and totally understand that. That is a huge lift. But the city continues to need funding to maintain local roads and complete the 224th corridor up the East Hill and make improvements to the interurban corridor. So we definitely support legislators getting back together and working on a transportation package going into next year. And then I just want to wrap up by turning directly to our legislators as much as I can in this virtual environment and just say thank you again. Really glad that our mayor and city council were able to honor you during Tuesday night's council meeting, and really glad to have the opportunity to say thank you again today.
Nicely done. Thank you, Derek. I know we are delayed in receiving Councilmember Upthegrove, so I'm going to ask a few questions that have come along the way. So hopefully everyone's still available to speak right now. And so initial question is, as many business owners, we have budgets and projections that we're working from. And it was reported that while revenues came in higher, the legislature still increased the budget and increased new taxes. And so can you help bridge the gap of understanding when revenues came in greater than expected, plus additional federal funding, what was the need for new taxes in this legislative cycle? Who would like to begin?
Well, I'd like to have an understanding of what new taxes they're speaking to.
So there's the capital gains tax was one tax that was passed this last session as an example.
Okay, we can talk to this capital gains tax. That's a very good one to speak to, because it was our effort to turn around the upside down tax system that we have, where the very high income would have very low rates of taxation and the very low income had very high rates of taxation. So we were finding that low income working people were paying 17 to 19% of their in state and local taxes. Those at the top end of the scale were paying less than 1%. So the capital gains tax is a wealth tax, and it only applies to those individuals who have property profits, not income, profits of over $250,000 a year. And it would only be a 7% tax on the over the $250,000 profit that they realized from the sale of stocks and bonds and other assets, excluding retirement system pensions and excluding properties and small businesses. So the capital gains tax will affect less than, I believe, 8,000 people across the entire state. And personally, I don't think it'll affect anybody in the 33rd district personally, because we don't have a whole lot of wealthy, extreme wealth people in our district. So that's the one tax we did increase. It'll go to court before it takes effect because it's going to be challenged. If it stands up and we are able to collect anything, the profits or the revenues of the capital gains profits tax will go to childcare and early learning.
So just to clarify, not disputing what the tax was for, but in a year where revenues were greater than expected, that's kind of, that's the line I'm trying to bridge.
Okay.
And
well, someone else can speak to the larger picture, maybe Representative Gregerson, who dealt with the budget overall.
yes.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about, well, first of all, what we're also talking about is funding the working families tax rebate, which is also helping to stimulate the economy by ensuring that our lowest income families are getting access to those dollars. So the ideology between the excise tax was to ensure that we were going to be sustainable in the funding of those very important issues that from all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other agreed that we needed to put the working families tax rebate into place, and that we needed to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into the child care system. So that was agreed upon. When we're talking about one-time federal dollars, we all know that that's not the way we budget any type of recovery. And so while we were smart about using the billions of dollars of recovery efforts, we knew that we had to do that in a way that was not something that was going to be long-term, like childcare, like the working families tax rebate. So that's the way we did it, is we infused dollars into ensuring people could stay in their homes, feeding, devices and internet accessibility, PPE, business support. We heard from Senator Keiser about that. So those are the things that we invested those federal dollars, and again in the capital budget too.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Oh, yes, Senator Doss.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, and I echo what Rep. Gregerson and Senator Keiser said. We do have the data. It's 55 people in the 47th district will be paying that tax, and 45 people in the 33rd district will be paying that tax. So we're talking about 100 people in our two districts combined who will be paying the capital gains tax. So please know, this is not most of us. It's definitely not me. And it's definitely not any other legislator that I know of on this call. So please know, we're talking about 100 people between the 47th district and the 33rd district, 100.
Okay, if I see your name pop up on that list, we're going to have lunch.
I wish it was me, but it's certainly not.
Yes. So there was several different comments regarding police reform legislation that was passed. And in that reform, can you tell us what you're looking for as markers for success of that reform, or indicators of how that will be reviewed going forward?
Well, I serve on public safety and judiciary, and a lot of the bills went through those two committees in the House. you know, the focus of a lot of the bills were around accountability, transparency. There was a lot of focus on training, and of course, the Washington Criminal Justice Training Center is in our area. And so I think we're going to, one, have more independent entities that will be reviewing when there is lethal force. So there'll be kind of a more stages of review and feedback, including you know, community members participating in those reviews. So I think, you know, for me, a big theme was transparency. It was having the data to know what's going on throughout the state. It was creating an independent entity, which I think that was Representative Entenmann's bill. So there were just a number, I think there was actually 20 bills that were packaged together. And again, you know, the leaders on that were Representative Entenmann, Representative Johnson. I know also Representative Tai on the House side, but I'll let others speak to the Senate side.
Well, we had Senator Wynn's bill on arbitration, Senator Peterson's bill on state certification, and Senator Conway's bill on community policing as well. And they all interweave. They all build really a really substantial framework for accountability. So we have the data, and we have the resources, and we have the results.
Thank you. And to some of that, I believe, as we've read in the police reform, was sending the appropriate person to the call. So in regards to mental health and the behavioral health crisis that many have experienced right now, are there any updates on the Washington State Hospital or improvements in our mental health care capacity? Representative Orwall.
Oh, thank you. And I think that's a really important question. You know, if you look at police shootings, 1 in 4 are somebody experiencing a behavioral health crisis. We know we have a system that can often cause trauma through how we react, including spending hours and hours in our emergency rooms that are not prepared to support people experiencing behavioral health crisis. So the 988 bill that we teamed up on is actually going to do huge investments. It's going to expand our call centers. They'll have the ability to triage people to get them to the crisis services they need. They'll be doing assessments, and they'll be doing follow-up to make sure those connections happen. And they'll be doing that in partnership with 911. We are looking at the landscape of our services, and we'll be expanding crisis teams, including rapid response over the next 2 or 3 years, so that if there is a call, it could be a co-responder model, or it could be behavioral specialists along with peer specialists that are responding. Some of the longer term investments we'll look at are stabilization services in the community, so people don't have to go to hospital settings. Again, you know, I'm really proud of, I worked with Representative Canoff. We will have the first tribal 988 line that will be 24/7. I'm very proud of that. And so again, we're trying to create a system that's culturally sensitive and responsive and supportive for people experiencing behavioral health crisis.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to respond? Yes, Derek, Mr. Matheson.
No problem. I just wanted to share that the city of Kent, along with neighboring police departments, got a grant from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, and now we actually operate a pilot co-responder model, and we're working with our dispatch center to ensure that the right call gets the right kind of dispatch. And then a couple of years ago, the legislature provided us with a tool called House Bill 1590 to raise revenue for homelessness and behavioral health. And so the city council has decided that we're going to use some of those funds to sustain the co-responder program after the grant runs out. So we're getting that going here in South King County, and we're going to keep moving it forward.
And if I could just thank the city of Kent. I mean, I know we worked all summer on the co-responder model, and so it's not just one jurisdiction, it's all of South King County really participating. And I want to thank you for being a leader on that. And again, I think those are, another example of a promising model. And I'm really glad that in the budget we passed, it's going to sustain that type of model. So thank you.
Thank you. Zenobia had a question come through.
Yeah, and so I'm sure this is a question that you guys have heard before, but I was in a restaurant a few days ago and I hear it every time that I go in and speak with my members here locally. And the biggest problem that they're having is finding employees. And so small businesses and cities included are having trouble finding people to hire because of the unemployment payments. And so should the state follow the lead of the other states and in that $300 federal weekly bonus to get more people back to work? I'd like to hear from each of you on how you feel about that.
Let me speak to that, Zenobia. First of all, I do not accept that people are not going to work because of their unemployment benefits. That is a false premise. The fact is, if you have a minimum benefit and the $300 federal increment, you are still earning on an hourly basis less than the minimum wage on unemployment insurance. You are earning $12.53. if you have the minimum benefit plus the $300 extra. Even if you were a higher wage earner, your unemployment benefit is essentially 50% of your income. So if you earned $800 a week, your benefit is about $400 a week. So add $300 on top of that, you're still coming up short every week, $100. So the unemployment benefit is not keeping people from work. What is keeping people from work is the lack of affordable, accessible, reliable childcare for women especially, and also the fact that so many of our individuals still have problems with COVID, both with having immune problems, maybe their family members are compromised with their immune system, and they don't feel safe going back to work. This will all hopefully fade away over the next couple of months as COVID fades away also, hopefully, and we get the child care system back in place. Finally, the federal benefit will end in September. So you're talking about 3 months. So that's not a big incentive as well to make any change with that. Finally, unemployment benefits are to help people spend money in your community. They are an economic development tool, a macroeconomic tool to get people to buy things that they need for their lives and their families. If they don't have that money, they don't buy things. So small businesses that want people to go out to restaurants or to buy things at their stores are going to see their problem on the other end of sales, not on the side of people working. So it's a multifaceted issue and very complicated, but please do not jump to the conclusion that cutting people's income will help small business. That's a doomsday scenario, in my opinion.
So as we're talking about business, last session there was a bill, I hope I say it correctly, QTAM, that was disturbing to many of us in the business community. And so as business owners are moving forward, having certainty in what may be coming down the pipe that they can manage risk to. Can you speak to that bill, and do you see it moving forward in this next session? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that bill has did not pass. It didn't pass last year, it didn't pass this year. And it'll be, as all things are in the legislature, another run will be made for it. And the debate will occur and the discussion will occur over it. I can't predict what will happen next year, but I do know that it's failed more times than it's had success.
Thank you, Senator Keiser. As you know, things come up on the radar, and as things pass they pass our eyes, and we just want to stay abreast of it and know where we need to continue to put effort and energy to managing those expectations on that side. We now have a Councilmember Dave Upthegrove who's joined us, and I will introduce Councilmember Upthegrove and let you speak to our audience. So Dave Upthegrove began his public service career in 2001, just a mere 2 decades ago. Since then, he has championed environmental stewardship, economic opportunity, and social justice for the people of South King County. In 2013, he was elected to be the voice and the vote of the King County Council. Dave's work has been guided by the people in the community he represents. By working with the community to champion local priorities and major initiatives, such as the Best Start for Kids levy or the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy, Dave has helped ensure that community needs in South King County are recognized and funded. In his role as chair of the Regional Transportation Committee, Dave has fought for changes in how we allocate bus service to better meet the needs of low-income, diverse communities in South King County. And so we will welcome you, Councilmember Upthegrove, and look forward to hearing from you today.
Why, thank you. It's an honor to be here with the esteemed legislative delegation. I know how hard they worked and had a very productive session. You know, the first COVID death in the nation was here in King County, and county public health departments are the front line of defense. And at a time when the federal government was really struggling, King County was literally leading the nation in our response, you know, by following the science, supporting our public health professionals. I don't know if you know this, but King County has the lowest COVID rate of any major urban county in the continental United States. But you probably also know we see disparities based on race and income. And that's why I've been working so closely with the community to target COVID resources to our low-income, diverse communities here in South King County. It's not a coincidence that the first mass vaccination sites were in Kent and Auburn. And it's not a coincidence that the first mobile strike teams for vaccination were partnerships with the Kent Regional Fire Authority to serve low-income seniors and people with disabilities in adult family homes here in Kent. You know, it's important that King County continues to deliver the public safety responsibilities we have. Also, as we safely reopen our economy, the county's beginning to focus more on helping people get back to work. And this means doing things like expanding a county partnership I started with local school districts to support students going into the building trades, where we know they can get good paying jobs with benefits right away. It means implementing a new green jobs program for Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth that I got funded and tucked it into our flood district budget. And finally, as I imagine you've probably talked about this afternoon, COVID has made it clear that childcare is a jobs issue. And that's why King County has proposed renewing our Best Starts for Kids initiative on the August ballot. And with my support, it was expanded to include childcare subsidies for struggling families and wage support for childcare workers. You know, women have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic, and childcare is a key strategy to help. The recent budget King County passed to allocate some of the federal COVID funds includes a big investment in economic recovery and jobs programs, almost 70 million. And that also includes some new apprenticeship pathways into behavioral health careers, and also construction apprenticeship and job training programs. So trying to match the industry needs with prospective employees. You know, this has been, I know, a very difficult time for the Kent Chamber, you know, as it's been for so many organizations and people. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Zenobia and commend her for her leadership. She and I met weekly through much of the past year, and it was actually her input that led me to propose and secure funding in the county budget to give some support to chambers and merchant associations in this past year, because it was clear that we needed to help the helpers, and the Kent Chamber was helping so many local small businesses. But the biggest role county government plays in economic development isn't really sexy stuff. It's by funding infrastructure needed to support healthy communities like sewage treatment, solid waste disposal, bus service. But a point I want to end with is that as we invest in communities and improve communities, we've got to make sure that everyone benefits. And this means King County has an important role to play in helping prevent small business displacement, especially in our immigrant and refugee communities. And to do this, we start by anchoring our solutions in our shared value of community. And this means including those impacted by displacement in the development of those solutions. And that's why during some very high profile displacements you might have read about in SeaTac and Tukwila in the neighboring cities in 2019, I sat with many of those small business owners to strategize. King County provided consulting and technical assistance, and these community conversations eventually resulted in King County funding a commercial affordability pilot program, which is a big mouthful for a program that provides grants, technical assistance, small business loan guarantees. And that program has helped spur new development, for example, of the new SeaTac International Mall in SeaTac and Spice Bridge in Tukwila. You know, King County needs to expand this commercial affordability pilot program to help more families, more small businesses. And I'm actually very excited to report that just last week, I was able to secure nearly $1 million in the county budget to do just that. And eventually we need to turn that pilot program into a full-fledged program to help small businesses throughout Kent. At the end of the day, the bottom line is pretty simple, and it's this: we want our small businesses to thrive, we want our community to shape our own future, and we want economic opportunity to provide for our families. And I appreciate everything the Chamber has done to help fulfill that vision, and look forward to working together with you.
Thank you, Council Member. And while we still have you, as you spoke about infrastructure, and we've mentioned a few times regarding President Biden's infrastructure plan, infrastructure has began to expand its definition. And so at the county level, at the city level, does that include the technology equity? I believe Representative Gregerson was speaking about a little bit earlier. Is that included in the new funding strategy? Is it different?
Yes. I would say a majority of the county's investments have been in people, whether it's rental assistance, food assistance, but one part of that has been a digital equity program. It has provided both capital investments in hardware, you know, making sure that every K-12 student can have, you know, supporting the state efforts and supplementing them to make sure that all students have access to technology. But also, it was actually an amendment that I had offered. We expanded it to include, there's a lot of other people in our community besides students who don't have access to technology, vulnerable populations, people who have language barriers, seniors. And particularly during the pandemic, so many of the resources for help you needed to apply online, so that King County is investing in digital equity, both in the hardware, but also in training and support to help people be able to access it. So absolutely. In fact, I would say King County has really emphasized the human infrastructure piece.
Thank you. Senator Keiser, I believe this question is for you. You had mentioned about a rebate, and there was a question about, can you explain more about that and who's eligible for that?
What we were talking about was the Working Families Tax Credit, which is essentially a sales tax rebate to low-income working families. It's very similar to the Earned Income Tax Credit that you have on the federal income tax system. And again, we have this upside down tax scheme in our state because it just weighs heavier on lower income families. This is an attempt to lighten that load a little bit. It's a small rebate in the neighborhood of $300 a year for a single person, or I think it goes up to $1,200 a year for a family of 4 or 5.
Okay, thank you. They wanted clarity on what that was. So does that come into play at the same time that the capital gains tax? Is that separate?
It is separate. It is separate from the capital gains tax. The capital gains tax, as I said, was if we ever see a dime out of it, but it depends on the decisions, will be dedicated to our education legacy. Yeah, child care and early education.
Okay, thank you. Again, getting clarity as we get a lot of information in this session. Just try to make sure I address most of the questions that came through. And I think most of it has been addressed. Oh, in addition, so as we are, I'm not sure if by definition, if we're heading to the end of the race with COVID, but do we anticipate that there will be additional grants for small businesses similar to how PPP was funded coming out in the near future?
Mia may have that answer. I know we did put money into the Department of Commerce for more grants, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
King County is providing some very limited additional grants, but I believe they're being targeted into the unincorporated areas, the areas where there's no cities, where King County is the local government.
Okay. I believe I've asked all the questions that have been brought up, but as our elected officials have stated, they are all available and accessible. We've included their contact information on each slide. We want to thank our elected officials and for their time, their commitment to our communities, and their availability and accessibility. Oh, one more slight question. I believe this is for Senator Doss. As you referenced the equity and inclusion, there's been conversation about the looking through legislation with an equity and inclusion lens. Can you give more specifics as to what that means?
I absolutely can, and thank you for the question. I also would love to defer to my House members, colleagues, because they were very focused, laser focused on how they did that by having each chair report out in their caucus meetings, which I thought was incredible. And I'm going to be talking with Senator Hasagawa about that as vice chair for the caucus on how to incorporate that for the Senate next year. So thank you to the House colleagues for leading on that. For us in the Senate, and Karen, Senator Keiser, please jump in as well. You know, it was a top of mind thing where we had talked very early on before session started. You know, if it wasn't related to economic recovery, COVID relief, the environment, or police accountability or equity, you know, that we just asked folks to maybe think about working on those bills next year, meaning the session that's coming up. And so that's really how we did it in the Senate. And I want to, again, commend my House colleagues for taking that one step further. If anyone wants to talk about what they did, I thought it was incredible.
I don't know if Representative Gregerson, who kind of led our effort on the House budget. One example I would give as it pertains to legislation was when we were looking at foreclosure prevention, we actually had an outreach committee led by Denise Rodriguez looking at communities of color that often are more impacted by foreclosure. How were we getting materials out? Were they in multiple languages? How were we directing the funds so that all communities benefit? So that might be an example at a bill level. But Representative Gregerson led our efforts on the budget.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was really transformational in the sense of every line item of the budget. We really looked at it through the lens of racial equity and inclusion, whether it was the definition of childcare deserts at that point in time. When it came to us, the definition did not really resonate with racial equity. It had more of a spatial equity to it, and that wasn't enough. Another example is when we had the federal dollars coming through, and we saw that we have programs in place that help very low income individuals, but you have to show proof of citizenship. So then we automatically looked at other state programs to see where we could invest in similar disaster cash type assistance so that folks that didn't have to prove their citizenship could still get access to some of these different resources. We know that almost every school institution came to us and asked for dollars regarding equity, inclusion, training efforts. And we basically funded every single request. We had a lot of member priorities. One of them was through a partnership with Habitat for Humanity out there in the Federal Way 30th Legislative District. And again, we funded that. So again, it's threaded through the entire budget. And sometimes folks will talk about it in a way that's really, oh, here it is, it's in this space, it's the fully funding the Office of Equity, but the reality is it was in basically every space, every place of the budget in this regard. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Representative Gregerson also noted that there's 200 million in the budget to support small business credit incentive, tourism and marketing recovery, and small business grant programs. There's also for food system resiliency and technical assistance grants through the Washington State Department of Ag, as an additional note. So as we have a wee bit of a hiatus, I will say, dare I say, a vacation moment, what are you preparing for this next upcoming session? Are there items where the chamber can engage with you and support? Are you looking at the vacation statement, Senator Keiser? Where can the chamber assist and support?
Oh dear, well, we're just recovering from this incredible session, to be honest. However, I'll be revisiting the unemployment insurance premium issue in August, when we make our next calculations, and seeing if we're on track or going south. And then the other issue I'm working on, and I'm going to be working with Councilman Upthegrove on apprenticeship programs. We have so many innovative apprenticeship programs developing, and we need to take a big picture look at how we can get those apprenticeship programs really lined up and aligned with each other so that people have real clear pathways forward.
And I guess to build on that, I'm really excited. ANEW, which is in Kent, did get 2 cohorts this summer and next summer of young adults from South King County that will be going through the pre-apprenticeship program. And again, I would love to see that expanded. The 988 implementation is going to take several years. And so we're looking at the landscape. We'll have bills next year of how we do the right investments and have the right partnerships. So that will be taking a lot of my time this summer.
Thank you. CEO Matheson. You have nothing to do right now, right? You're on a break.
We're coming off a great session, very thankful. I mentioned transportation revenue. I think that's going to be a key issue moving forward, and look forward to working with legislators on that one.
I'll go ahead and share as well. I am taking a little bit of a break. It took me about a month, I think, to decompress from that extremely stressful and productive session. I know I was working 15 hours a day, every day for 105 days sitting. I told my sister-in-law yesterday that one day I took 42 steps. So according to my phone. And so, you know, there's some recovery here. But I have a long list of things that I'm working on over the interim, including statewide composting, which I'm really excited about. The credit score bill was an executive order, but we want to remove credit scores in insurance determinations. Happy to chat with the business community about that. You know, EV charging stations in gas stations. That's something that I'm really passionate about. So I have about a list of 20 bills. So if you want to know more, reach out.
And can I jump in, Carmen?
Yes.
If everyone else had gone, the King County doesn't have sessions. We just kind of go all year, but the things that we're going to be working on moving ahead aren't real complicated. It's continuing to focus on the public health response, number one, and number two, do what we can to help with this economic recovery so people can get back to work. As was noted, I think in your nice introduction, I'm the chair of our regional transit committee, and we have a big project in the year ahead to change how we allocate bus service to better center equity. And when we do that, that's very beneficial to diverse communities like the city of Kent. So I've been working with city leadership to try to advance that project, and that will be a big priority. You know, there's a famous quote from the Desmond Tutu, who said, "Hope is being able to see the light despite the darkness." And I don't know about everyone else, but I'm starting to be able to see the light a little bit. People are getting vaccinated, businesses are reopening, and our region is poised to respond and is bouncing back faster than almost any part of the nation. And I think it's because of good leadership at our state level. It's good, and because of good leadership from local businesses too. So I see some light moving forward, and I have some hope.
Thank you. I believe Representative Gregerson hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you. Yeah, so we in Kent, we know that we have fossil fuels rolling through our community all the time. And actually, King County has been a leader on this. Department of Ecology has it on the books through an RCW since the 1990s. But King County actually just passed legislation to talk about making sure that these carriers have the appropriate amount of bonding to protect the product if they're going through local jurisdictions and something happens, that local community can recover if there was an accident. So, you know, we have a proviso in the budget, but again, it's going to require probably some political will to ensure that there's a statewide approach to this. A few other things I'll be working on is, again, the missing middle of housing. We know that in particular in South King County, we have large lots. There's so much opportunity to be able to help folks that are property rich, but maybe financially have a harder time with financial institutions to be able to build additional dwelling units or condoizing. And so doing that in a way that's both feasible and appropriate for local communities, and to do that in partnership with our local governments too. So many more things to talk about, but I know we're getting to the end. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. You all have represented the 33rd and the 47th with great distinction, and we appreciate your service. Councilmember Upthegrove, thank you for attending today and for all that you do for the county. And of course, CAO Matheson, thank you for being part of our community and working with us. I will return this over to Zenobia for the conclusion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carmen. And I do want to just say a special thank you. I know, and I've seen you guys jump from one meeting to another. And I just think that that's amazing, and that you took time, that you understand that the business community really wants to understand how you know, legislation is going and how they're going to be impacted. So a special thank you to those who were able to make it, and even the ones that weren't able to make it. I know that you want it to be here, so please send those updates if you need to. But again, I also want to just say that you guys have an open invitation. We do have a government affairs committee that meets on a monthly basis, and I've seen most of you visit that at one point or another, but that's really just an open invitation for you to connect with the business community. Mona, I know you mentioned right at the end about the insurance and removing that credit score. That's a conversation we're having in government affairs right now, so an invitation directly to you for sure. And so just so you know, you guys are wrapping up this session, and the way it works at the chamber is as you begin to wrap up this session, we begin to kind of go into a different session. We have you guys wrapping up today. Next month, we have the pleasure of hosting our Kent City Council debate, and we are going to doing that in a live version. So we will be in person next month doing that Kent City update. So be sure to check your mail for an invitation there. And you know, there's a few seats up for grabs here. City Council, but again, I really want the business community to be there, but as legislators, I think it would be an opportunity for you to be there as well. So you guys talked a lot about, you know, recovery and some of the things that we can do, and employment and taxes. And I think this is just kind of fitting of what's kind of coming into our community that might be new to folks on this call. Is Goodwill 360 is opening in the city of Kent, and essentially it's like 360, right? So there's services that Goodwill offers. A lot of folks don't know that they offer training programs and certifications. They're looking to do that directly here in the city of Kent. So there's their location. We're going to be doing a ribbon cutting. I think it's on the 15th of June at 8 a.m. You'll all get an invitation, but it really shows that this community is trying to embrace the underserved. This community is trying to embrace and move us through this pandemic, and then also set us up so that we can sustain if something like this, dare I say, God willing, just does not happen again, but we will we will prevail. So I invite you all to come to the city council debate. I invite you to come and see what Goodwill 360 is going to be doing for the community. And thank you so much to Councilmember Upthegrove for taking all of my phone calls all of the time when the pandemic helped, and the power of helping the helper. We really appreciate that from the business community. So with that being said, I'll give you 5 minutes back into your day. Do as you please with that. Do something good. And so I appreciate you all and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.